Looks like everybody is joining and connecting to the audio. So hello. Happy October. Happy spooky season. I'm so excited. We are almost like in the thick of fall. Get some of this hot grossness out. So I hope everybody is enjoying the government not being shut down and cooler weather. So now that everybody has connected to the audio, again, welcome. We're so excited that you were able to take some time today and jump on our meeting. So before we get started, just want to do some general like housekeeping and announcements per usual. If you don't mind, please remember to keep your mics on mute unless you're participating in the discussion or asking questions, which we love. There's a lot of us on the call, so it just kind of helps the audio stay clear for everybody else. Also, if you have the ability to turn your cameras on and you're comfortable doing so, please go ahead and turn those on. It's always nice to see a face or friendly face. Any face is nice. And then finally, as our speaker goes through their presentation today, go ahead and jot down questions, anything that you may want to discuss. We love a good Q&A session after. Other than that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Braden, and he can introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Georgia. Appreciate you. Yeah, I'm really honored to introduce Kristin Middleton today. Kristin is the Executive Director at the Domestic Violence Resource Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The Resource Center provides resources, shelter, food, clothing, transportation, legal and medical assistance, all to individuals who are experiencing the effects of domestic violence in an effort to help them regain control of their lives via in-house staff, as well as civilian volunteers who are out there on the ground with those victims. Kristin was raised in Albuquerque and graduated from Albuquerque Academy and NMSU. Our Vista leader out here, Becca, describes her as a Renaissance woman. She pursued careers in sales, writing, marketing, and then started up a home care company in the Denver area, which she owned for 10 years. And as a survivor of domestic violence herself, she works to apply her entrepreneurial business and operations experience to help other victims escape the throes of domestic violence. I am humbled and honored, and we are so lucky to have you here with us today. And so here you are, Kristin Middleton.
Good morning, and thank you for such a nice introduction. I'm happy to be here. I'm very informal with this presentation. My PowerPoint is actually geared towards kind of the local market here. So forgive me if if it sounds like I'm trying to tell you about our services here, because that wouldn't really do you much good where you are. But there are always local resources similar to ours. And if any of you guys ever need any help, you come across something, shoot me an email. I'm happy to give you my cell phone even. So I could certainly help you in the throes of a situation, find some local resources. So that being said, please, I welcome your questions. We talked about whether we should save them for the end or do them in time, in real time as we're discussing these particular topics, and maybe a question does arise. Please, let's in real time address those questions. I think sometimes, especially when we're talking about this sort of sensitive stuff, it's better to go ahead and talk about it in the moment so that we are sure not to lose any, poignant ideas or solutions that we might arise and find together. So with that said, I guess I can start sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, it's already up. We can see.
It's already up. Awesome. Okay. So we are Domestic Violence Resource Center in Albuquerque. We've been around since 1996. We go by DVRC, just for ease. Here's our mission. We empower victims and engage the community to break the cycle of domestic violence. It is a cycle. It's a generational, cyclical, repetitive problem. Our objectives are to prevent and intervene and help with recovery for victims of domestic violence, and many of those people are children, unfortunately. We serve close to 4,000 victims a year, offering crisis intervention, advocacy, legal advocacy, education, and case management. We are not a shelter. We do work with shelters, partner with them here in the local markets. It's difficult to find a domestic violence resource place that maybe will offer all of those things in one. It's just a really difficult business model. So we provide the advocacy. We help with immediate emergency situations. We respond with the police even to the scene of active domestic violence situations. And we'll talk more about that as I go through here. One thing to always remember when you're working with or come across really in any particular, whether it's in your line of work or in a personal, more personal setting, always remember that the crime is the offenders. The fault is the offenders. And the responsibility lies on that person to change. There's a lot of victim blaming in our society, unfortunately, because unless you've been touched by this, which, heaven help you, really. Let's just hope you don't. Because you really cannot understand what a victim goes through unless you've felt it yourself. Or you're an extremely empathetic individual that is able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. But that's a really big thing to always remember.
And Kristin, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you potentially, I really appreciate that. And I'm just wondering if you could provide a couple of examples of what you mean when you say that, when you say victim blaming. What kind of things might people engage with when they're engaging with victim blaming?
Well, yeah, you're right. That's kind of a broad explanation. Okay, this happens all the time. Well, why did you stay with him so long? You weren't married. Well, I know you had a kid together, but you could leave. Not understanding why the victim doesn't leave is huge, because it is so hard to leave. Many of these victims, most are women. Yes, there's some men, about 98% are women, are under the control of their offender. They've more often than not have complete control of the finances. The victim may not even have a phone in many cases. They've been isolated from friends and family. And this happens through time, to basically where they've created a person who's completely dependent on them, the offender. So it is not easy to leave. And that's really like where my organization comes in, because the person does need to be ready to leave in order for us to be successful. But the average number of times that a victim attempts to leave before they're successful is 8. So that's the average time. That means that somewhere between, what? I have to do math here, 8 and 16 times, then they're finally successful. So it's that's a perfect example of victim blaming. Does that illustrate it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to not talk about New Mexico criminal law. All the laws are different in each state. But this is a slide that demonstrates that it doesn't just have to be an intimate partner to be considered domestic violence. It can be a step parent, a parent, former spouse, I think a child as well. So it does not just limit itself to a person that you're intimate with. Domestic violence cases, if the victim makes a police report, okay, and that's a big deal, because many times they don't want to, because for fear of it just inciting their offender further. But if someone does, it's typically treated 2 ways. It's either the person, the abuser is either charged with a misdemeanor, which is more often than not. In my case, I'm a survivor of strangulation, and I did go make a police report. And of course, at that time, I had no idea what any of this was all about. It came out of left field for me. So I had no idea how the how the whole law enforcement side of this worked. He was charged with a misdemeanor. I mean, that's not right. In hindsight, I wished I'd known more, but I did not. So subsequently, he's gotten his record expunged. So misdemeanors, it gets delayed in the courts. Typically the bond is set at very low, and the person is out within 24 hours, which was the case with mine as well. So just in general, in the world, I would say, not just the US. I mean, I can speak a little bit to our justice system. I don't believe that offenders of domestic violence are brought to any sort of justice more often than not. If they do happen to be charged with a felony, there's either the case where they arrested the person or they didn't arrest the person. Obviously, an arrest is creates a much better outcome for the victim. But it's so complex, and so we get these people that have just become victims of domestic violence. It's probably been the worst day of their entire life, worst thing that's ever happened, and then all of a sudden they get kind of thrown into this whole world of trying to figure out, oh my gosh, what do I need a restraining order? Okay, well, what do I do? And you go to the DA's office, the DA can't help you fill that paperwork out, but a resource center like ours can. So that's where we really, really help, especially in those emergent situations where the person is going to actively flee that time right then and there, and they need an emergency restraining order. So that's one of the ways in which we feel we could be very effective.
Kristin, I think we may have a question.
Sure.
Thea, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I did. So I myself am a survivor of like child abuse growing up. And my question is actually going back to how it's classified as domestic violence, or if any crime committed against any member of the family, whether it's a spouse, a grandparent, or even a child. Has there been a change in legal classifications of child abuse versus that of domestic violence, or is there a reason why we are classifying crimes against children as domestic violence and not as child abuse?
Gosh, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that.
Okay.
Sorry to say, there is an organization here called Children, Youth, and Family, CYFD. You might have something similar to that there. I would ask one of those folks, because I don't typically work with children. We're mostly working with adults.
Okay.
And so even in the case of a child, I guess that's what I meant was, it's typically an adult child. Maybe either the adult child is abusing the parent or vice versa.
Okay. I was just seeking clarification on that because that kind of the wording confused me a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Sorry, I couldn't answer it better.
It's appreciated.
Any other more questions, Braden?
Not at this time.
Okay, this is just more about the complexities that are involved in an arrest that is made in the case of domestic violence, and just how very difficult it is to hold these people accountable. I mean, it's the legal hoops that you have to jump through are pretty overwhelming. This is the basic outline of what goes on in a domestic violence situation. It's all about power and control over another. And there's many different forms of domestic violence. It rears its ugly head, if you will, in many different ways. They isolate an individual, very manipulative. They'll use the kids. Oftentimes, they'll abuse pets and other animals in order to gain more control. Sexual abuse, whether that's withholding or the opposite of, Economic abuse, like I alluded to earlier, having complete control of all the finances, the house is in, or the rent is in the name of the abuser, and the person would have nowhere to go. Of course, threats and intimidation, and emotional abuse. So domestic violence causes a trauma response within the victim. It is pretty similar in many cases to kind of what you might experience. I'm not gonna compare it directly, but to a veteran. It's so big, and so it just blows your mind that this happened, and your brain doesn't know what to do with the information. So the trauma responses that come up are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. It's all about the amygdala and what it does to basically protect you. It's a very, I don't even know, it's inside of all of us, and it's a response to keeping alive, basically, what occurs. And it doesn't make you feel like you have very much control over yourself, that's for sure. Here's just sort of an outline, of the diagram of kind of just how really horrible it can be in the different levels of trauma. So this is what we do here. We have people round the clock. Our advocates are the folks who deal with the immediate emergent situations, getting restraining orders, getting emergency restraining orders, helping to connect a victim with resources for legal situations, such as pursuing a divorce or custody of children, etc. Our field advocates go out in the field and respond to, as I said, active DV situations. They put on a bulletproof vest and get in the squad car if that's the kind of altercation that's going on, to provide that victim right then and there with services and options, which they may probably not be aware of at the time. Case managers are when maybe we have many situations like this, where we're following that victim through the course of their leaving and helping them to make a plan. First thing is a safety plan. Then it's like, okay, well, the kids are in school, but his mom takes the kids to school, and how am I not going to, just really breaking out the situation and working with individuals on a longer term goal to get them back on their feet again. We do have a helpline that is manned almost 24/7, and we support walk-ins and appointments. These are more of our referral resources. We work with the Rape Crisis Center, sexual assault nurse examiners, New Mexico Legal Aid, and other counseling and other options that the individual will need.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If it's okay. From a person that has had some trauma from past relationships, whether it be a narcissistic or more emotional than physical. Sometimes I'm finding that the insurance that one carries does not provide sufficient for them to be able to even qualify to get any type of help, because the insurance is like minimum. So it doesn't cover anything as far as mental health. And so what would you say with that? And for, I guess, stuff that it's more, because it's just the same trauma, emotional trauma and physical trauma to me are just the same, or just as devastating. And so, yeah, could you direct resources of, I guess, what type, but yeah, where we could go that would qualify with the insurance that one might carry that might be the minimum?
So I think that's where you want to reach out to your local resources for domestic violence and say, where do you guys refer counseling service? Unfortunately, you're going to find that there are long waiting lists. But get on that waiting list and then try to hold out so that you get that counseling, because you definitely need it when you've been a victim. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, Ms. Patterson, is just to reach out and ask your local service providers, because I wouldn't know what you have there locally.
All right, thank you.
And again, I've alluded to all these things and mentioned emergency orders are obtained right away so that is an option. A lot of people don't realize there's an emergency order of protection. It's the same thing as a restraining order, but that's the current lingo. These are local statistics from our police department and sheriff's office, just to give you an idea. Bernalillo County sheriffs responded to 811 DV calls. 32 involved weapons. Weapons and domestic violence are a really, really bad combination. APD, which is Albuquerque Police, had over 10,000 calls in 2021. Ourselves here at the Resource Center, we field over 600 helpline calls a month, and we see about 200 individuals in person per month. Okay. We do send people with emergency cell phones. That's a big deal. I have a joke, because so we go purchase those track phones. They can't be tracked. They're kind of short term. I don't know if those are typically used in other, maybe more nefarious industries, but we have had our credit card flagged several times when we've jumping around to all the different Family Dollars in town buying track phones. Gee, I guess that looked a little suspicious. So yeah, it's kind of our joke here. But we help with food, and we have clothing, and we can fix them up with a suitcase. So many times they have absolutely nothing with them. Anybody know this signal? Do you guys know the signal? Look out for it. And it can mean basically I would say it's not just a thing about domestic violence, but it could be about any sort of coercive situation, just when someone needs help. If you ever see someone do that, try to help if you can. I guess that's it. I guess that's the end of my presentation. I didn't realize that was the end. So I'll just.
I have a question here too. So you mentioned right at the end here, when referencing the signal, if you see this, then try to take action. And maybe this is something that you haven't spoken to yet, but what kind of actions are we as individuals empowered to take in a situation where someone is expressing a need for help, or and then I guess the follow-up too is
I would just
identifiers as well beyond.
It's so hard, right? I mean, without being in the moment in any given situation, to know what we would do. And there's no right or wrong answer, but just thinking, let's say if I saw a child, that was looking and did that hand thing, I would be like, holy moly, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? And I guess I would probably try to, it just depends on how involved you want to get. Is there an officer nearby? Are you in a car? Can you get a license plate? And I would call your local, I would just call the police. That's what I would do. I would say, I'm here at Lowe's and there's a girl, she's acting strange. I think somebody needs to come here. She just made that universal hand signal, etc. Just do the best you can, right? And I don't have all the answers.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I'll just share this document real quick. This is, let's see, that's not it. There we go. This is actually meant for nurses. I oftentimes speak to, healthcare organizations. The couple salient things out of this is basically, again, don't victim blame, just have patience. I love this here. Victims often feel unsafe or even ashamed to admit they're being abused. And some of them have even normalized the dynamics, no longer realizing it for what it is. So really, when it comes right down to it, subtle clues. And this, again, these are people that are nurses, but you never know what you're going to run across in this world. Contusions, lacerations, bite marks, burns. Also watch for subtler complaints, including delays in seeking care. So maybe they're putting off appointments, repeat visits for chronic or seemingly minor things. And really just try to employ your empathy and don't blame the victim would be my just overall takeaway on that.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So just pure curiosity on my end, the hand signals, do you have data on how successful that has been with reporting to police officers or other people in authority to respond to that?
I don't.
It's just like I've always wondered about like the angel shot and all that other stuff. Like how successful is it in actual real world applications?
Yeah, I don't know. All I can say is it's better than nothing.
True.
I mean, I don't have statistics or data, but it's at least there's something out there. The more and more we talk about this openly, but there's such a shame associated with it. I mean, I'm going to be a little personal here, but even my own mother and I got into a fight last night. My situation happened 7 years ago, and she doesn't understand what happened. She still blames me. And, it's awful. It's awful. It's like, it's just going to take that long because, she's 80 years old. And she's just comes from a different generation where you just, you never admitted weakness in any sense of the way. And she's never going to understand. And I just have to realize that. But that's the whole thing. We've got to change this culture surrounding it. And when we do that, it'll start going away because people will recognize it when it's happening to them. So thank you all so much for your time. Please, if you have any more questions, I'll throw my email in the chat and my cell phone. And so thank you very much. Anything else you guys need?
Hi, my name is,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Oh,
no.
my name is Pat Ivy, and I just want to say on behalf of those women that you service, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, because it takes special people to do what you do and stick with it. I have experienced domestic violence years ago, but the Lord has blessed me to be able to maneuver through life. And so I appreciate you and what you do on behalf of those that deal with what you're dealing with, especially for the heart of the children, because we a lot of times we don't know or even understand how it really affects the children. So thank you for what you do. And I pray that God will give you tenacity and stamina to hang in there until you are ready to retire. Don't retire. Keep doing what you're doing for those that are in those situations. Thank you. Thank you for your heart your compassion, your love, your team. Just thank you. It means so much. Thank you.
Thank you. You just made my day. Appreciate you.
Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to share this afternoon or this morning? All right.
Thanks, guys. It's heavy stuff. I appreciate you guys being so cool. And someone asked me yesterday what I did for a living. I was at, well, it was Sunday. I was like at this pretty like fancy champagne brunch up in Santa Fe. It was beautiful. And this chatting with this lady. She goes, "So Kristin, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm the executive director of the Domestic Violence Resource Center." And she just looked at me like, I mean, it's not what people go, "Oh, okay, yeah." So it's pretty crazy.
Well, thank you again.
Guys,
It was super informative. Well, the neat thing about having a tri-state thing is we get to hear about very specific locations, but we can also take that information and apply it to where we are in our own communities and learn how to recognize and learn who to talk to about what. So definitely thank you so much for that.
my pleasure.
Yeah. Braden, did you have anything else to say? If not, I can close this out.
I don't. Just thank you again to Kristin, and thanks for everyone who's here with us today.
Alrighty, well, our next session, I say that I don't actually know the date, but we'll see you next Tuesday in, what's the next month? November? Golly, y'all, it's hard. Anyways, we'll see you guys in November. Thank you so much again. This presentation will be available hopefully this afternoon. We'll have that link sent out, but other than that, hope everybody has a good rest of the spooky season. And we will see you next month.
Georgia, please send me a copy too, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.